Good evening, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting Spring on Pluto. Okay, tonight we're going to start the geometric floral iris pattern around the pupils, around the pupil, the left pupil, or on the right side. So I've gone ahead and drawn in some markers to where the spikes of each triangularly shaped portion will peak. And so we're just going to kind of freehand it from those guides. So here we go.
I don't think people were monogamous before the invention of agriculture. I think orgiastic sexuality was the tool and created, as I said at some point, a very tight group bond. This man bonds of male paternity. Consequently, loyalty was transferred to the group, not to my children, but to the children of the group. I was monogamous for 15 years, and the argument that I used for it was what I call the union theory, which is that you can go in a monogamous relationship. It's an alchemical marriage. It's a fusion of souls and an effort to really go deep in the experience. But it seems to breed a gnawing discontent in a lot of people. I mean, it certainly did in me. And I don't know whether that was because I fell from the ideal state of monogamy, or whether it's in fact that I do. Europeans are a little more sexually sophisticated than Americans. And there, relationships are more unstructured, and having something going on the side is not thought such a monstrous and debilitating thing. Now that I'm single for 2 years and had all kinds of experiences, including non-monogamous relationships and new monogamous relationships, I'm sort of at my roots end. I mean, here's my thinking. This is just to take you back. Remember, you practicing. I know, first of all, I think celibacy is for the birds. Any spiritual discipline that demands celibacy, I think is highly suspect and probably some kind of a shell game, and certainly not for me. So what I'm saying there is being single and celibate, that doesn't work. I am pretty profoundly convinced that monogamous marriage not only doesn't work, but provides a very bad role model for children. I really think the nuclear family is called for the production of neuroses, that most psychotherapists are earning their living by cleaning up the mess made by family life. That's where we all got really twisted, is in the early family life. And it's not a traditional arrangement. This idea of marrying people, and you and I will get back to back, and we'll fight off the rest of the world, and we'll create a tiny island of happiness, it's a very paramount kind of area. But I am very capable, or in the past, I am very capable of being incredibly jealous.
Went out.
To the point where jealousy doesn't feel it develops involved. How could one be casual about wanting to love or be with someone else? It didn't come from a head decision, it was visceral that seemed unbearable. But now I think that this is a neurotic response, and that the reason jealousy is so intense in monogamy is because one has no option. if you're monogamous and your partner destroys the monogamy, you're screwed and you have no fallback position whatsoever. You come out to Iran, you're profoundly rejected, and you have no recourse. So then I concluded, monogamy doesn't sound right. Well, then we move on to more exotic possibilities. The underground agenda pushed by fashion magazines and all the slimy weasels in the cosmetic industry and all that is menage a trois. This is pushed with the advanced experimental far out to get into. However, when you analyze it, it seems to me that it's an extension of male dominance fantasy, that it is in fact a sadomasochistic arrangement of some sort that caters to male dominant fantasies, to have two women, and inevitably those two women would somehow fall into competition in the presence of one man. This would then is further exacerbated potential for male dominance and so forth. So then let's be good mathematicians here. If 1 to 2 doesn't do it, how about 1 to 3? Now this is interesting. I don't think a lot of guys sit around or lie around thinking how great it would be to be with 3 sexually rapacious women. That's a kind of heart-sinking thing to do. Because you don't know if you're paying enough, frankly, for that kind of situation. And so that terror, that possibility strikes in the normal male is, I think, a good indicator that maybe we have a choice. The other one is it's a meatball. It's amorphous. It's very hard for anyone to control something like that, because there are so many data points in the field, so many potential liaisons, so many potential deals that can be cut, that I think is shifting, exciting, changing, unpredictable, like that. I have to tell you, I haven't tried. So I'm just a mathematician with an action for the truth. It was saying for a long time that one woman, one child made a huge amount of sense to me, and I gave you that argument. It's only recently occurred to me that the limiting birth is also something to be considered, that there are too many men. It's an uncomfortable situation for men, and it's an uncomfortable situation for women, because femininity is suppressed in a sexual dynamism that is 50-50. Also, higher mammals rarely occur in 50-50 sexual display. If we were held, there would be many more females than males. And the well-known fragileness of male infants causes me to suspect that in the absence of male-dominated values and modern medical procedures, I'll bet the natural ratio of the sexes is closer to 2 to 1 than 1 to 1. And I think the relationship of men to our sexuality is very different from the relationship of men to our sexuality. So I can imagine a future world where the nuclear family is replaced by these alternatives. 3 women, 1 man, and the children. Women are enslaved by men, keeping them functioning in their maternal role. So I don't have answers here, but I do think that we need answers, and that we need to think about this. And monogamy as an ideal, I feel the force of that it would be wonderful to have a soulmate that would follow you through life until eventually you were 2 white heads on a single pillow. But The one thing I've learned from psychedelics, and it's a hard truth, it's a hard truth, but it's a true truth, is nothing in this universe lasts. Nothing lasts. The last dance you do alone. Rome fell, and this you go to, your enemies will turn to compost, your fortune will be dissipated, your friends will fall away, and eventually you yourself will cease to be. Nothing lasts. So, in a way, I'm conflicted about this, but I really believe that we should all take complete responsibility for ourselves. I remember when I separated from my wife, and this was a revelation, when I separated from my wife and decided to live alone, I went out to get an apartment. So I interviewed for an apartment that I liked, and this guy seemed to like me. So we sat down across from each other to fill out a piece of paper, and he said, and I had told him I lived in Sarah for 13 years, which was true. And he said, what's the name of your bank? And I said, it's the one in town, the time flasher on. I said, only lived for 13 years and found a cheap thing. I said, my God, how do you put that? I've actually never been inside like that. And then I realized, my God, I'm not capable of going to the store by that 7. And I think that even I allowed somebody else to take over so many important functions of my life that I'm like a maladaptive person. I'm like a street person or something. So now, I do my automobile insurance, save my receipts, balance my checkbook, do all these things, and feel quite good about it. And I think everybody should take responsibility for themselves. I don't think all marriages are bad, but I think a huge number of people, each age, 20, 21, 22, 23, they're sailing across the Golden Gate Bridge toward authentic adulthood, but suddenly there's this sign, last exit before adulthood. Get married to someone as lame as you are. Add up to one older person and function in society. So I think it's a good exercise to take responsibility for yourself. But I do not have the answer to this man-woman thing. I don't think anybody does, I love women, and I can imagine falling in love with a woman who, if she asked for monogamy, I would probably do it. But with this because jealousy is not a pretty emotion. Do we want to make room for it? Are we so afraid of it that we want to honor by creating relationships that are based on the fear of it? Or do we want to somehow, it's a thing of ego. It is a thing of ego. I mean, for me to believe that I can be all men to a woman is an incredible ego trip. For a woman to expect that she is all things to a man is a similar kind of ego trip. And, but it's very hard, and it's easy to talk theory here. It's very hard to actually take three distinct human personalities with different histories and different agendas and throw them in a sack together and have it work. I don't know what to do about this, but I'm grappling with it, I'm sure all of you know. We shouldn't be so discontent. We shouldn't be so unhappy. And somehow, I think the psychedelics point the way toward this. They seem to inspire a generosity and a lack of fear and an openness that shows the way toward an authentic sexuality that isn't based on possession and control. And that's really what Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah. Uh, Not specifically, but I would be very gentle on the unborn fetus. Part of the problem in a question like that is is that these substances are illegal. Consequently, the kind of research that should have been done to answer that question has never been done. I've seen women in the Amazon smear their nipples with ayahuasca to nurse a 3-day-old child. Uh, on the other hand, these things are neurotransmitters, and it is well known. I don't know if you know this, but it's well known among pharmacologists and physicians that children often metabolize drugs backwards. If you have a hyperactive child, you give them Ritalin, but Ritalin in the adult is a stimulant, jacks you up. So I think as a general rule, one should avoid exposing the fetus to any kind of chemically exotic environment, especially in the first 8 weeks or so after conception, when so much cell division is going on. But that's just a cautionary and conservative position on my part. The actual amount of data is nil on this question. Yeah.
What do you think is going on? You mentioned it a bit.
Well, I only have an opinion. I just have an opinion. I paid attention very closely. I read Richard O'Neill's book, Carlos Castaneda's The Power and the Allegory. I read this new book called Turning the Road, called Carlos Castaneda, Academic Opportunities in Psychedelic 60s.
I don't know. Let me think here.
I
It's decent,
have not
but
heard what these women are saying
third
that are
layer.
going around. I understand it's something about balancing PowerPoints and doing something to Earth. It sounds like
You do it.
kind of standard New Age rhetoric. I don't disbelieve in the violation of natural law, but I'm skeptical that it's tough. I suspect that what we have here is a sincere effort that went wrong in some way. The first book, The Teachings of Gone Wrong, is a classic. And aside from some minor quibbling, I think everything said in there about psychedelic substances is true. That book was published in 1968, I believe. The next book followed in 1970, and the position on psychedelic drugs has changed completely. I really believe, and I know how it works because I'm in the biz, that he was told, you're on to a great thing, but we are not editorially going to stand behind you if you insist that drugs are the way to do these things. And at that point, it swerved off into literature of some sort. There are a lot of odd things about those books. Internal inconsistencies, external inconsistencies, and, I don't like dumping on other people's trip, but on the other hand, I'm just too much of a rationalist and too much of a detailist to be able to let that all slide. So I see it as the monomyth of our time. I can imagine, if my ideas about the future are all that in 400 years, people will be offering sacrifices to Don Juan, and a religion will be in place about this great teacher who rose and fell in the 20th century. And Carlos Castaneda is the fall to Don Juan the Christ. But I don't we'll remember the famous crow transformation, first book. We'll read George MacDonald's Through the Gates of the Silver Key, and there is almost direct word for word a description of the transformation taken the crow written in the late 19th century. So I see it as a kind of a topical nickname. And I know that disappointment all that's me. Yeah.
So like in the States, so it's companies machines. And what we recommend that is subversion or could you also remove that subversion?
Yeah, mainly what I think is programs. Yeah. But here's the thing that I think is so problematic about the 1960s. A single ambitious graduate student in biochemistry could produce 5 million hits of LSD in the local junior college laboratory if he had the keys and a long weekend. 5 million hits. This means that you are not trying to get your friends and yourself high. This means that you are trying to become the CEO of an international criminal enterprise capable of making billions and billions of dollars. And when you manufacture 5 million hits of a psychedelic drug, this is like whipping out a loaded gun and gesturing with a gun with it. They're not used. Let's think of a psilocybin mushroom grower. If you're a psilocybin mushroom grower and you do nothing but grow, and you work like a dog for 6 months, you might be able to produce 10,000 bits of psilocybin. 10,000 bits, as opposed to 5 bits. This is a micro industry. It doesn't create vast criminal pyramids. If you have 10,000 hits of psilocybin that you have to get rid of over 6 months, you have a few connections and you sell it. If you have 5 million hits of something, you have to sell it at a very low price to a second level of medium. You slightly raise the price to sell it to a third level of medium, and finally discounts. In other words, you have to organize a criminal conspiracy of some sort. This alarms the government. The other thing is the government is very alarmed when people make money on drugs. Well, if you're a dedicated mushroom grower, you can support yourself and your family in a moderately middle-class style, but you're not going to be buying a Lexus. You won't be making a payment on apartment in San Francisco like this. It is just a loop. And when you think about the fact that these big ships that bring weed up off the coast of Florida, a guy with a fast speedboat, a guy who is a kiosk in that organization, they pay $250,000 per trip to the mothership. And if you have a good speedboat, you can make 3 trips a month. You can make $750,000 a month bringing weed off these motherships, and you're not a music player. You're a disposable kiosk way down the structure of this criminal organization. So the money differential is incredible. That's why I think the plants are so exciting, and why I urge people to grow mushrooms. You can be assured of purity. You can't produce so much that you're going to wreck your life and bring guys with black jackets sitting down in the front door.
All right, it's going to take another session, at least a few minutes worth. Take 2. Go zoom in on that a little bit more. Go. Might as well. It's pretty detailed.
conceive of. So I think plants and scale. And I love the slow spread of mushrooms, the slow spread of ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is even harder to produce than mushrooms. If you get together 500 bits of ayahuasca, it is an enormous industrial entity. So let's move so slowly that they hardly know we're there. And also, it's not necessary to present phenomenon dropping out. I mean, I think it's much better to take over. When you walk into these software labs in California, everybody has hair down their ass. Everybody is free. It's perfectly out in front that the creativity that is the hallmark of the American civilization has for the past 30 years been sustained by psychedelic substances. When the Japanese want mahogany, they go to Java. When they want furniture, they go to Sweden. When they want brain power, they go to California. And it's psychedelic brain power that they exploit. So if we were to truly limit our access to psychedelics, that would probably be the final blow to our ability to function, participate in world markets. Because without our creativity, what are we? Yeah.
It raises the question about access to computing. Well, and I mean, like I said, it's the 5 million hits. I don't know if it's a different chemical process that, is more difficult to achieve. Why isn't it?
Well, I think what happens with DMT is that chemists who can make small batches. And consequently, unless you're their group manager, their girlfriend, it's all gone by the time you hear about it. In an ordinary laboratory, it's quite difficult to make more than 100 grams. That's only 4 ounces. To scale up to do industrial production in EMT, you basically need a small pharmaceutical factory. You need big stainless steel vats, you need complex temperature controls, so forth and so on. Providing DMT will always be in spotty and in limited supply until it's leaked, or if it becomes used. Yeah. Well, that is sure a lot of how about this? Humans were infected by plants to move seeds around. What is so good about plastic that the earth is on it may be that what we do are thinking machines. That's a little scary. Marshall McLuhan said it on he said, we are the generals of our technologies. We exist only to improve next year's life. And that's a kind of scary thought. It took us millions of years to evolve where we are. The rate at which our machines are evolving under the design process that we control is 1,000,000 times more rapid. I mean, look at the computer. UNIVAC was 1948. That's less than 50 years ago. The computer sitting behind me was 100 times more powerful than UNIVAC. If automobiles had developed at this rate, then they would go 10,000 miles an hour on a nickel's worth of gas twice around the world. So, it seems to me that silicon is where our technology is part of us that is evolving. Our bodies have stayed pretty much the same for 100,000 years. Meanwhile, we've shed and replaced our technologies 500 times in that period, and are doing it rather fast. And years ago, they used to say machines can't think. You notice how that practice fallen out of stress. You don't hear it anymore. Now nobody's sure exactly what it was. Parallel processing, chaos theory, geometry, cellular automata. The question is now so mathematically complex that no one's sure whether machines can think or not, because no one's exactly sure what thinking is in this moment. And one scenario for our own salvation is that we will somehow be downloaded into circuitry, or that we will somehow become machines, and therefore no longer need to make such intense demands on the earth. But I don't exactly understand how that scenario is brought to conclusion. That people like Hans Norlander and Tibbets and these people, that this is their big nanotechnology machine replacement of subcellular organelles and human beings, a gradual replacement of human cellular material until your entire thing is spun gold, silicon, video. And yet there was never a moment you cease to be yourself. But these things that come from
Pondering what to do here. That's probably going to take a whole nother double session to redo the gray portion of the steps and the hole in the head part of the circle composition. So I think that might be it for my first
We
time.
are not monkeys. We are not angels. What are we? Is man good? This is the question that we handle on printed and yeah.
Let's say society like 10%
So yeah, I think that ends this session for the moment. I am going to zoom in about that. End up spending quite a bit of time on this one, I think. Because what the idea is from here is to make that pattern somewhat behind a translucency of eyelid that might be glazed on top of it. But I'm not quite sure because I'm really digging that shape. So we'll see how it develops from here. But that's it for now. And for anyone interested in what's going on in the background there, that's Terence McKenna, Language About the Unspeakable. I posted my psychedelic slideshow version of it. That's the live footage on the screen. And that gets that set in, the basics of it. And I'll see if I end up making it a translucency, translucent layers over it and relitting it a bit. But I kind of like that pattern just as it is, and it adds a lot of life to that lower right-hand section, which was sort of unbalancing the composition beforehand. But now it's starting to get some balance. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting spring on Pluto. Have a good night, Earth.